Hello everyone, Chris here, and today I want to show you my top 10 most underrated perks in Dead by Daylight. Now, a little disclaimer, this is just my personal opinions, and I'm not trying to claim that these perks are actually really good and everyone else is wrong. All I want to do is try to shine some light on some of the perks that not many people uses and try to show you that 1, they can be fun to use, 2, they can actually be pretty useful, or 3, both. Now, in this video, I'm gonna talk about my opinions about the perk itself, come up with some suggestions to perks you can combine it with, then I'm gonna give you a build that you can try out yourself. So that means that in this video, I'm gonna give you 10 different builds on 10 different killers, so you can try out yourself and see how useful these perks actually can be. But without delaying it anymore, let's get right into the video. Number 10, Forced Penance. Survivors that takes protection hits are broken for 80 seconds. 80 seconds! That is pretty long, but I leave this on place number 10 because it's still very situational and it's a perk that absolutely works best if you know you're up against a Swift, as they are known to be more altruistic and to take protection hits for each other, which is why I kind of call this perk the Swift Killer. Now, this perk could be combined with perks like Mad Grit, Awakened Awareness, or Sloppy Butcher. I would recommend trying this with the Spirits, with the Talisman and the Daycap add-ons, the perks Forced Penance, Mad Grit, Devour Hope, and Hex Undying. Number 9, Thrilling Tremors. When you pick up a survivor, any gen that is not being worked on at that very moment are blocked for 16 seconds, and it's very easy to see which gens are affected. All you need to do is actually look around when you pick up a survivor so that you can see if there are any gens being worked on at that time. I don't know how many times I've had Thrilling Tremors, and when I pick up a survivor, I totally forget about it, and I don't look around, and I don't get any value out of the perk. So don't do that. But seeing if there are any gens that are being worked on, that gives you a clear notification of where to go next. You could combine this with other perks like Nowhere to Hide, Pop Goes the Weasel, Call of Brine, or even Hex Ruin. I would recommend trying this out with Pyramid Head and the double range add-ons, and the perks Thrilling Tremors, Monitor and Abuse, Nowhere to Hide, and Hex Ruin. Number 8, Spies from the Shadows. When this perk is not on cooldown, whenever a survivor disturbs a crow within 36 meters of us, we get a visual cue. Spies from the Shadows can be a pretty good perk for finding survivors in the later games, because how many times have you been in a game, there are 2 survivors left, and from that point the game lasts for another 15 minutes, because the survivors are just hiding. So this perk can be pretty useful in those scenarios. And as it has a really short cooldown, it has the potential to give you a lot of valuable info during the entire match. You could combine Spies with perks like Make Your Choice, Dragon's Grip, or Starstruck. I would recommend trying this with Deathslinger with the Keys and Whiskey add-ons, and the perks Spies from the Shadows, Make Your Choice, Starstruck, and Scourgeshook Floods of Rage. Number 7, Coupe de Gras. And yes, I don't know how to pronounce it. Every time a generator is completed, you gain a token, and you spend 1 token to increase your launch distance by 80%, which is pretty long. Now, Coupe is a perk that is mostly towards like the fun gameplay, but its strength is in the fact that no survivor ever expects anyone to use Coupe. So that usually means that you do get a few free hits in during a match. But as you only have 5 tokens in total, it's very easy to spend a token by mistake, and it makes it really hard to use and has a big waste potential. But when you use it correctly, you should be able to get some really good hits in. Try combining this with perks like Bamboozle, Superior Anatomy, and Fired Up. I recommend trying this on Myers with the Infinite Tier 3 and the Memorial add-ons, and the perks Coupe, Bamboozle, Superior Anatomy, and Fired Up. Number 6, Discordance. Discordance gives you a notification when there's more than one survivor working on a gen within 128 meters of you. Now, I would say that Discordance is a really important perk these days, because the gens, they can pop really quickly. Especially if there's more than one survivor on a gen, and one of them has proved itself, which is a pretty common perk these days. Being notified when there's more than one survivor working on a gen, that is really valuable information, and something that should probably more than often be prioritized. This perk works really well on killers that have high mobility, as they are able to interfere before it's too late, especially in cases where there are two discordances popping off at the same time, which happens more than often in the early game. Now, discordance could be combined with perks like overcharge, oppression, fearmonger. I would recommend trying this with Wraith, with the Shadow Dance and the Serpent add-ons, and the perks discordance, oppression, bamboozle, and make your choice. Number 5. Fearmonger. When a survivor is working on a gen, they are affected by the blindness and exhausted status effect, and the effect lingers for 5 seconds after they stop repairing the gen. Now, I'll say that Fearmonger is a really good perk, because making survivors blind and exhausted while repairing gens and for 5 seconds afterwards is really good. As Sprint Burst and Lithe are some of the best exhaustion perks these days, being able to catch survivors off guard at the gens, then not being able to sprint away, is really nice. Now, this perk could be combined with perks like Discordance or really any other perk. Now, I would absolutely recommend trying this with Ghostface, with the Drop Leg Knife Sheet and the Driver's License add-ons, with the perks Fearmonger, Discordance, Jolt, and Thrilling Tremors. Number 4. Monitor and Abuse. Now, Monitor and Abuse is a perk that some people use, so it's not that underrated, but I feel it's still worth mentioning. While you are in a chase, your radius is increased by 8 meters, but when you're not in a chase, it's decreased by 8 meters, as well as it gives you a bigger field of view. Monitor and Abuse is a really fun perk, because I feel that anything that is slightly off the ordinary will quickly confuse the survivors, so having this shorter radius is enough to catch survivors off guard, and that's why it's so fun to use. The extra field of view is also really nice, especially for me, because it doesn't take a lot for me to get juked by a survivor that tries any sort of like FOV tech on me. As this perk just affects your radius, then you could pretty much combine it with anything. I would recommend trying this on Bubba with the double chili add-ons and the perks Monitor and Abuse, Fearmonger, Bamboozle, and No Way Out. Number 3. Fire Up. Now, this one gives you a 4% speed bonus that stacks for every gen that is being completed, and it gives you speed bonuses to picking up survivors, dropping survivors, vaulting, kicking generators, kicking pallets, and breakable walls. Now, Fire Up is a perk that I find to be really fun, because it does feel good that you get some sort of benefit whenever a gen is done. Now, from the first gens that are being popped, you don't really get that much of a value out of this perk, but even just like an 8% speed bonus to picking up survivors is enough for survivors to miss the flashlight window. Now, if we compare this to Brutal Strength, which is a really good perk, then at the end game we will get the same benefit as Brutal Strength, but it will also apply to vaulting and picking up and dropping survivors. Fire Up can be combined with perks like No Way Out, Nowed, and even perks like Bamboozle or Brutal Strength. I would recommend trying this with Trapper and the Bloody Coil and the Secondary Coil add-ons, and the perks Fire Up, Brutal Strength, Nowed, and No Way Out. Number 2. Hex Blood Favor. Whenever you injure a survivor, every pallet within 32 meters of that survivor is blocked for 15 seconds. Hex Blood Favor is a really good perk, but it suffers from being a hex perk, which can end up giving you absolutely no value at all if it's cleansed within the first minute of the match. But if it is up, you will get an incredible value out of this perk, and the survivors have to kind of play a bit differently. But the most fun part about this perk is more than often the first time this one triggers, that catches the survivors off guard and they will do some sort of boo-boo and it's a free hit or a free down then in that case. I highly recommend using Hex Undying with this perk, as well as maybe Hex Thrill of the Hunt as well. For the fun of it, you could combine this with Claustrophobia or Bamboozle or even Hex Crowd Control. I would recommend using this on Sadako with the Pinwheel and the Calm add-on, and the perks Hex Blood Favor, Hex Undying, Hex Thrill of the Hunt, and Hex Ruin. And finally, we are at number 1. The love of my life, the most underrated perk in Dead by Daylight, Oppression. When you damage a generator, up to 3 other generators also start progressing. If there are any survivors actively repairing any of those gens, they are faced with a difficult skill check. In my opinion, this perk has massive potential, but it suffers from having a pretty long cooldown. Oppression can work really well in certain scenarios. So many times I've been in a match where I come across so many gens that have been progressed, and that kind of stresses you out a bit. So being able to kick one gen and knowing that if there are more gens being progressed, then they will start progressing, or more than often if there are any survivors on that gen, then that gen will explode and they will lose 10% of progress. And that's kind of what makes Oppression so good, because it is also a perk that no one kind of expects. So survivor getting a difficult skill check just like that more than often catches them off guard and they will miss that skill check. So if we talk about a best case scenario, you kick one gen and there are 3 other gens that have a survivor working on them. Let's say all the survivors miss that skill check. That is 10% of progress lost on 3 gens. That is pretty damn good. And it also gives you a notification of where there are survivors working on gens, so you know where to go. Now, Oppression is fun to combine with perks like Deadman's Witch, Pop Goes the Weasel, and Hex Huntress Lullaby. I recommend trying this on Freddy with the double dress add-ons and the perks Oppression, Hex Huntress Lullaby, Pop Goes the Weasel, and Sloppy Butcher. And yeah, that is the list of the most underrated perks in DBD, in my opinion. I do hope these perks get some more love in the future, but take into consideration that I am a kind of player that doesn't like to use what is considered the meta, and I actually try to actively avoid using meta perks at all costs. I hope you enjoyed the video, and feel free to leave a comment if there are any perks that you feel deserve a place on this list. But until next time, cheerio!